Good afternoon everyone and welcome to today's webinar hosted by Radix Web. I am Jay, working as a business development manager at Radix Web. I am glad to see you all here today. In this exclusive webinar, our speakers will get you an answer on how to improve your business processes, enhance innovations and reduce cost by empowering your software development and management practices with cloud technology. I would like to have a pleasure to introduce our speakers for today's webinar. We have Magnus Martinson. He specializes in cloud computing technologies in general and Microsoft Azure cloud platform in particular. He is the first Microsoft Azure most valuable professional in Scandinavia, a Microsoft Azure insider and a Microsoft Azure advisor, and have also been awarded my MVP of the year in 2012. He has an experience working with Microsoft technologies as a software architect, technical specialist and a team lead since 1997. We have Pratik Mistry as well on the webinar today. He is an accomplished software professional with 10 plus years of strong industry experience in product management, technology consulting, product marketing and strategy. He has hands-on experience in building, leading and managing different size teams in global delivery model. His key focus areas include Microsoft technologies, key account management, delivery management and team management. Thank you once again to join us today, and let me hand over the session to Magnus to get started.
Take the latest code into a demo environment so that he can do this all-important demo presentation for a customer this afternoon. I mean, he never shows up the day before, right? I mean, it's if he wants something tomorrow, he will certainly come and ask you tomorrow. Also, the testers can be kind of curious people. They seem to have this opinion that they always need to get the latest test features in the testing environment, because if they can't perform the tests on the current build, then those stories won't be part of the sprint goal or whatever kind of strange priorities these people have. Also, developers are curious creatures. They sometimes do the funniest things when they deploy things. For instance, go and deploy development connection strings to the production environment, effectively putting the development database online. And well, I can honestly say that I've actually done this myself. It's not a great feeling. It's certainly not something you want to do. So back in the days, way back when Azure was called Windows Azure, and in the early days of this cloud platform, deployments can take a long time, and there really wasn't a lot of error checking or anything like that. When something went wrong, you didn't exactly know why. You had to just fiddle with something and then start over and try again and wait for another deployment. It was not a pretty story at all. Which is right now, because now in Microsoft Azure, the deployment times are really slow, really fast. I mean, it's really low deployment times and lots of warning messages and things like that. And if a failure happens, it doesn't really matter because you can just go ahead and redo. So remember the boss and the developer and the tester guys? This presentation today is going to help you make these people go away and allow you to just get into this very nice Zen mode of getting things done. Now, I can't really see you guys, and I can't talk to you a lot. You can ask questions and you can raise hands and things like that. But I hope that you guys are people who are interested in being productive, interested in getting things done, and interested in doing the work, getting the features out or whatever it is that you're doing in your project, rather than doing maintenance and demo environment deployments and upgrades and those sort of things. Those are things that aren't actually productive for you, but are things that you must do. So I hope that you are interested in this, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. First of all, I'm going to hand off to Pratik from Radix Web to give us a short introduction on Radix Web.
Thanks for that, Magnus. So thanks everyone for joining this webinar. A brief about Radix Web as an organization. We are an IT services company based in India with over 15 years of establishment. We have a retail size of around 300 employees and have been working with Microsoft technology since more than a decade now. We are gold partners for Microsoft, and lately we have started this initiative of knowledge sharing with the community and the fraternity, so that it's more of a mutual Well, core services, what we offer in the area of IT outsourcing and IT services, it involves basic IT consulting and software development services for web, mobile, and desktop platforms. We have been working with a lot of software product development companies in being their workforce for actually building their product. We work on application migration, modernization, and legacy applications re-engineering services. And we have been doing a lot on the cloud platform as well. And Magnus has been associated with us in terms of we plan to do a lot of things together as well in this area. And lastly, we are into application support and maintenance services. Yeah, that's pretty much about Radix Web. Bit of divert from the core topics. I'll again hand it over to Magnus to take this forward.
Thank you, Pratik. Thank you very much. Yes, so as you know, I am Magnus Martinsson. I run my own company called LoftySoft, and I'm a partner of Radix Web. We work together where I can come and be the Azure expert and help Radix Web with setting up projects and doing things like that. Over here in Europe, I'm based, but I do travel for work, so it doesn't exactly matter where I go. Hopefully I can be of service to companies that need to approach the cloud. I was the first person to become an MVP for Azure, the most valuable professional for Azure in the Nordic countries. I've been around the Azure cloud since its inception, really, since we knew about that this thing actually existed. I'm also what Microsoft called a regional director. Unfortunately, it doesn't mean that they give me a paycheck. It means that I work closely with Microsoft as a global partner of sorts, a very trusted Microsoft, which I use, of course, to help my clients and customers achieve their goals. If you have any questions at all, you should feel free to email me. My email is on the screen. If you have any follow-up questions or anything, just go ahead and reach out to me. I like to do great community events, such as the Global Azure Bootcamp, which is a global event, happens every year. It's happened 3 times now, and I can disclose that it will happen in 2016 in the spring again. We have a website for it, but last time we did this event, we were at 182 locations worldwide, which is an amazing, amazing number. And it's a full day of community event for Azure, really. Every location does one event on the same day. Also, you should check out the Cloudburst website. It's a conference that I organize. Looks like this. The website, you can register for this event, but that's only if you want to be in Stockholm on September 17th to 18th. But this will have an online streaming happening at the same time. And for the 2 days, all of these presentations will happen with some really good world-class speaker names here who will talk a lot about Azure. I urge you to check that out. All right, let's go to the content of this presentation, finally. I will use this picture as a backdrop. It's one of the higher managers of Microsoft called Brian Harry. This is from a conference about a year ago called Connect, where Microsoft talked about a lot of things, and one of the things they talked about were these evolving practices inside of Microsoft that they were already working on and have been working on since and are continuing to put investments behind going forward. You can see that the word continuous is very dominant here. You have your continuous delivery, your continuous monitoring, and your continuous learning. And these evolving practices are things that will make you as a company or as a project manager perhaps, or architect, or whatever your role is, make you much more productive and efficient, make your company be able to focus on the business challenges and rather than lots of other maintenance tasks, really. So that's what this presentation is about today. For the remainder of the presentation, I will talk only about these things. So we'll start from the beginning by setting up a web application in Azure. This is basic stuff, but I just need somewhere to put our code so that we can look at it and have something to center around. Now this is the Azure portal that I'm in right now. You can see that I'm in portal.azure.com, and I will create myself a web application. It's going to take a few seconds to do, but then we'll have a playground to center around this presentation. So let's create ourselves a web app called Radix Web Party, I think. Radix Web Party. We'll create this web app right now in Azure. You can see that there's a deployment happening here. You get a visual cue. You also have these notifications on the side where you can see things that are going on in your Azure account. We'll wait for this thing to complete. Usually takes just a few seconds. There we go. Okay, so what happened now? Well, we now have a website in my Azure account, and it's public live in Azure. You can browse to it right now. You can get a browser tab and browse to radixwebparty.azurewebsites.net. You can keep that around the tab because I will deploy my application and get some nice audience interaction going later in this presentation. But it's right there. As you can see, the site, it's a public URL. You can browse to it, but it doesn't do anything yet. There's no website there. So the next step then, once we have our web application in Azure, is that we need somewhere a project space for our source code and for our team project and the management pieces and such. Back in my browser, I have Visual Studio Online. Now you can certainly do other things than Visual Studio Online, but I will use this as a really good example for this, this presentation. It's at, I have my own subdomain there, my own account at Visual Studio Online called magnus.visualstudio.com. I use this for a playground for doing demos and such. I also own loftysoft.visualstudio.com. And you guys can go and sign up for free right now and get your own company name .visualstudio.com and get your own space looking exactly like this. So we needed a new project. Let's create a new team project and call it Radix Web Party. Okay, and I could use a description there if I want to. Let's use an agile process template. There are different templates you can choose from. And version control, we'll choose Git for this presentation. I'll create a project. This will now go and create my team project, as you can see here from the progress. And what we're going to get is a nice project space for us for this project. When I navigate to it, I will get two options. I can either go to the code immediately, or I can go and manage my work. We'll have a quick look at this. I will not spend a lot of time, in fact only seconds of this presentation in here, but I will show you that I can do like first item, second item, nice agile workflow here with an agile dashboard of sorts, right? I can move around items like this, and I can get work done. We can set up iterations and stuff like that. It's really, really, really handy, and Microsoft is doing a lot of investment in here to give you really quick and agile boards that you can customize this a lot and change it to suit your process and everything. It's very nice. What we want to do next is go over to the code and see that there really isn't any code in this repository yet. There is a URL to an empty repository, and I will use PowerShell and clone this repository to my local drive down to a folder called Radix Web Party. I'm now getting the code from Visual Studio Online. Of course, my PowerShell window is already authenticated with my own magnus.visualstudio.com, so I can clone this code down to my local machine. And I can browse to it. And we can look at it right here. So it's empty, and for the sake of this demo, I have some other code, of course, that we will copy over like this so that we get a website to play around with, and it's going to be part of the demos going forward here. So we'll launch Visual Studio with this code and see that we indeed have now a website. See if we actually got Visual Studio launching. Doesn't seem like it. Let's see. Come on. Ah, there we go. I must have missed it. Okay, so we get Visual Studio going, and we now have a website that we will go ahead and publish. So now, of course, we will check in this source code as well, up here, and know that we now get the source code up in Azure, or not up in Azure, in fact, in Visual Studio Online, we get the source code checked in. I will get a pop-up alert box here, which has to do with some kind of a plug-in to my Visual Studio that's not working correctly. I'll just get my Visual Studio opened. It's taking a few minutes here, or seconds, I don't know why, but we'll surely be on the way soon. Spinning donut. Make sure that we only have one instance of Visual Studio going. That explains it. We have several. Okay. I did hit the button before, but it's giving me 2 instances of Visual Studio here. We'll just remove one. Hang on. All right, so we have, hopefully, opened our project. And I can now build this code. And the project consists of a very small solution here. This would be your code instead. So you have your application insights test here. This is the web application that I'm running. And application insights is something we're going to talk about in a second or later in this presentation. And have some unit tests right here. But what I wanted to do now, of course, was to publish my website, right? That's what we wanted to do. We'll just let this thing start the way it wants to. Let's make sure we only have one with Visual Studio. Yes, we do. We only have one Visual Studio going. But it is still hogging something here. Let's see. Yes, now I'll right-click on this. And we can hit publish. So right-click and publish, and we want to go to Azure with this. I can select Microsoft Azure Web Apps. And you can see that I'm signed in. I'm signed in to Azure from Visual Studio. Azure knows about me. And I will be able to select the web app that we just created for deployment. It's going to have to pull up my available web applications here in this drop-down. And we will choose our Radix Web Party website. It's now downloading my publish settings, and I am able to say that I'd like to now please publish to Azure. So what's happening now is downloaded credentials to publish to Azure, to my website, and so they're downloaded to Visual Studio, and now what is happening is a completely standard, normal web deploy straight to Azure of this website. And that doesn't actually take very long. And it's funny because when it comes up, it usually actually hasn't really synced up yet. The browser opens before the site actually deploys. But when I refresh this page now, you can see that we have a very simple website deployed. This is designed by a developer, so please have some acceptance for the fact that this is a template website and it has some functionality. This is actually built to fail. I urge you to go and click on this now. It's radixwebparty.azurewebsites.net. You can send me a message. I'll send myself a message. Radix Web, Lofty Soft. I'll do that. I'll send myself a message. You can use this box to send me a nice message. Please send me a nice message. And if you click on, for instance, contacts, you'll notice that, oh, this page doesn't actually work. There's a 404 on this page, and the About page also has some problems. Sometimes the About page doesn't work, and that's done intentionally for us for the purposes of this demo. All right, so we have a nice publication now. We have published to the cloud, and we have our source code. I'm just going to go ahead also and check the source code in. Haven't done that yet because the Visual Studio thing took a couple of seconds extra. We'll go to the changes. I think the GoToWebinar thing is making my Visual Studio a little bit slower here, and that's good because then we have time to see what I'm doing. I do have some changes locally, of course. I have my code that I haven't added to my GitHub repository yet, and or not GitHub, my Git repository in Visual Studio Online. I will go and add all these files that I copied in, and I will do like a setup commit or something like that. I'll commit that, so I can use, of course, the command line, or I can use the Git extension to Visual Studio to go and sync my code up into my repository. So now I'm syncing all my changes into my repository, and that's happening right now. If I go up to my Visual Studio Online account and I hit on the code link again, you can see that I do now indeed have my code committed and nice up in my repository. So every change that I now push into this will be remembered, of course. Okay. So we have our application in the cloud. You can browse to it. We have our project space set up. The next thing is now to connect the source and the web application to get our deployments going really quick. And the way to do that is to go back to actually our Azure portal, and we have our website here. If I scroll down in this blade, they call it a blade, I can see that down here in the blade there is this deployment section. And if I click on deployment, I can go and do a deployment from a source code repository, and I can choose one. I can use Git or GitHub or Bitbucket or Visual Studio Online, for instance. But this is a preview portal. This is Microsoft's preview portal, and this part sometimes in the preview portal doesn't work super great. So we will not do it from in here. Instead, we will go over to the old or the current portal, the current management portal, and we see that the Radix web party has indeed been initiated here. If I go into it, I can see that I can integrate with source control from in here. And this thing actually really works. I've used this for, I suppose, almost years now. I need to go to my visualstudio.com account, do this one-time authorization when I connect my website to my repository. Accept this authorization here, and then I will be able to pick my Radix Web Party website and connect it to my website. There we go, all connected and done. And Visual Studio Online will build and deploy my project to Windows Azure. This is the current portal. It says Windows Azure all over here. When I do my next check-in. Okay, so let's go and do our next check-in then, just because. And let's say that we do some changes to our code and perhaps some changes to our application here, and we get another version. On my website, I have output just for our enjoyment here, version. So I can just change this version to 1.5, for instance. We've made some changes, and now we have version 1.5. So let's go and check these changes in. Go back to the changes. we have the change to the layout page there, and we call that version 1.5, for instance. I'll commit this and sync it up to the cloud. Hitting sync. This change will now go into my repository. Okay, great. So the change is committed, and what will happen now? Well, going back to this page, it'll soon start saying that we're doing a deployment now. And over in my repository, I can go into the Build tab, and underneath that I can see that indeed the linking between my web application in Azure and my repository created automatically this build definition called Radix Web Party CD, and that's continuous deployment. And this was created when I linked up my web application in Azure with my repository in Visual Studio Online. And you can see that my commit, my push of code from my local machine up into my repository created this deployment thing here, which is now going to build my code and run my tests and do a deployment. It's going to take a while, so in the meantime, let's talk about changes. As you all know, changes are dangerous, scary things that you should stay away from as much as you can. This is my nice picture that shows changes and how that can affect people. When the carriages started to be able to be automatically movable by mobile by themselves, right? They were automobiles. They were able to go down the street without a horse in front of them. Some people were really, really scared by this strange, ungodly change. You know, it was the carriage of death coming down the street, right? So in order to sort of cushion the blow for some people to accept change, they sometimes mounted a horse's head at the front of the carriage so that people wouldn't be so scared of this very strange carriage. Some of the earlier designs of these things actually had whip holders as well, because if you don't have a whip holder on your carriage, you know where you're going to put the whip, right? So it's important. So changes are scary, and I'm going to say a really scary thing. You can actually deploy continuous deployment style. You can have your developers develop code, push the code to your Visual Studio, for instance, Visual Studio Online, and have that built, tested, and deployed straight into production. Now, that's really scary, right? I know a lot of companies that, you know, don't feel that that's even possible at all. They basically have this this notion that, hey, wait a minute, you have to do these gated check-ins, and you have to have, you know, a test lead signing off on the delivery, and so on and so forth. And you know, I'm not gonna deny that sometimes this is very useful. Sometimes you actually need that, and that's important, and I accept that. But if you ask me, honestly, I know a lot of companies that do go into production immediately with every change, and they just work fine. There's nothing wrong with doing that if you can. If you can't, you can do your continuous delivery deployment to a test environment, and that's fine as well. So going back to the demo, continuous delivery is happening here. This thing takes a while to build and takes a while to deploy, because this is running now on a build controller up in a hosted build controller up in Azure in Visual Studio Online, and this thing is going to run my tests and deploy. Now, I'm going to disclose that this is not going to work this time, because I also have a unit test in this project that I have created beforehand, and this unit test says that a true win is 1. And if I run this unit test locally on my box, it's going to fail. So I'm running the unit test, and the result is a failure. Because all of us true geeks know that a true win is not 1. If we know our Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, a true win is 42. So if I go and correct this test, change it to 42, you will get the expected passing test behavior. That's a new change, so let's go and check this in as well, or push it up to my repository. Let's call this version 1.6. We'll go and excuse me, go and take these changes and push them up into our project. Fixed the test. That's a perfectly legitimate comment when you only have one unit test. All right, so this is now pushed in. If I go back to the cloud here, let's see what we have. We have the queued build. Did it complete? Maybe it did. Let's see. This is probably the first one still showing here. And maybe it's come to the state now. We'll see that later anyway. The first build will be in a state of, yeah, partially succeeded, because the build succeeded, that was great, but the tests did not succeed, which wasn't so great. And so this deployment will never happen for this first build. And if our, maybe our check-in didn't happen yet. Okay, cool. We'll go and sync, make sure that we sync the code as well, and get another check-in. And when I go back to the queued here, you'll see that, yes, I now have a new deployment 1.6 happening, and this will repeat itself and actually come to not orange state now, but it'll come to green, and it'll automatically deploy. We'll come back and look at that later. So now we have an automated deployment continuous delivery style setup. So every time I commit code from Visual Studio to Visual Studio Online, there will be a build, unit test, and deploy into my production environment. So that's great. We are now in production. Yay! Score, right? That's awesome. We're in production. If I can see that the production is running, right? That's great, right? Or is it great? Is it okay even? I mean, how do we know that the production is working? How do we know that stuff is running? I mean, is my application, is it available? Is it performing? Is it succeeding at all? Is it making my business better? My web application, is the deployment that I just made making things better or worse? What's happening? How do we know? Well, when you are a seamstress or a tailor, when you sew clothes, you have this saying, right, that you can't just go cutting every which way in the fabric. You have to measure and then cut. And the same is certainly applicable to our web application here. If we don't measure the success of our application, how do we know if version 1.5 or version 1.6 or version X is better than the previous version? How do we know that the application is running? Microsoft has this nice picture to sort of show this, and it indicates here on the left side that we have this development process that happens, right? We have a development cycle, and then there is a deployment phase, and hopefully the deployment is automated to remove this task of deployment from the workload that our developers have, or whoever has that responsibility, and also remove human error from the process. Then there is this production cycle going on. There's something in production all the time, and the needs of the product, the needs of the users and such will feed new requirements into the backlog, into our agile, nice backlog that we can then use to cycle into development, and this nice cycle continues. But also in the center of this picture is another very important part, the collaboration piece, where there is some monitoring and some activities going on to make sure that the production is running. There are some people who have this responsibility, maybe some DevOps or IT department. Somebody has the responsibility to ensure that the production environment is running all the time. And what needs to happen is a good set of collaboration between production and development in this modern application lifecycle. The way to enable this really, really well is done in Azure very efficiently by something called the Application Insights. Has this nice light bulb logo. And Application Insights is honestly as easy as 1, 2, 3. One is telemetry is being collected on your mobile applications, your server applications, in your browser application, and wherever your code is running, telemetry and data of both the performance of this application, but also on users' interaction with your application. All of that stuff is collected, and then it's sent into Application Insights. And in Application Insights, we'll process and store the data collected, and then you can, as a developer or as somebody who owns or runs this product, you can check to see if something is failing, is it all performing, is everything good inside of the application. I'm going to go and show you this right now in what's called Application Insights, and also we're going to look at deployment slots and traffic routing. This application has Application Insights already. When I go and say I want a new project in Visual Studio, I automatically get this option to add Application Insights to my application. I can choose to add it or not, and in this case we're actually not going to add it because we already have it. So when I right-click my project, I have Application Insights already. It would say add Application Insights here if I didn't have it. So I can open it and look at it, and I can configure it and such. What this means also is that I have some references to Application Insights in my code here, some NuGet packages that run Application Insights for my site. I've done one manual thing that you can do if you want to get analytics of your website automatically, and that's to add this typical script section here, which will collect interaction and things happening on the browser side of your application. Optional thing that you can do, but if you do that, it's the same with Google Analytics and other options that you insert this little script piece to get collect analytics. That's the one thing I changed here. What I also did with the references that you saw before is I get a nice SDK where I can actually go and interact with Application Insights from my code. I have this telemetry client that I can use, and in my code here, for instance, in the home, the index index action, I have track event start home. I can track metrics, calls to home, how many times have this page been called. I can track events that start and end, and I can measure the time, how long is the time between these things. When you post messages to me, I hope some of you have posted some messages to me. When you post a message to me, I'm using trace to trace this message. Maybe not what you normally would do, but it's good for demoing. And I have also, for instance, an exception here where I get this 500 error on my server application, and I'm tracking this exception using the SDK of Application Insights. So that's on my code side. That's already prepared in my demo here. I have this code already up in Azure for us. And if we go back to our website, our Radix Web Party website, you can see that it's inside of a resource group. I didn't tell you this, but I already created in Azure something called a resource group where I have already a pre-existing demo, of course, one which is always working. When I created my website, I also got this telemetry instance of Application Insights. Microsoft is very aggressively pushing Application Insights to the Azure users because they obviously want their customers to use Microsoft products. So this is automatically created. If you don't want this, instance, you can just go and delete it. We're not using this instance today. So in fact, I will delete this once it comes up to be able to delete. Now, I will go ahead and delete this because I don't need it. I have configured my Radix Web Party website to use this instance of Application Insights instead. I already had that in the code. It's called Magnus Demo. And so this is the one we're going to click into and look at. So here is Application Insights soon. All right, Application Insights coming up. Not everything in here is completely configured, but a lot of things are. For instance, I have already set up a web test before this started, and this is actually pointing to my other website, but it's pointing to the page which sometimes fail, and I did that intentionally to show you that this stuff will show up here. I have successful tests and failed tests. A lot of them are failing here on my website, but I automatically see that I get a 500 when visiting a specific site here. And this is already set up as a web test here that I call Site Up. This web test will measure from different locations around the world how my website is performing. And here you can see the data, sometimes working, sometimes not working. Testing from Singapore, from Stockholm, and from Chicago. This web test is all this stuff is set up by Microsoft. I don't have to do anything other than just configure this thing and say, I have a web test that my application is responsive. If it's not, I can have alert messages sent to my development team or my DevOps team or whatever is relevant for me. I have all of this telemetry now that I can dive into. There are many things that I can click on here. How many alert rules do I have? What's the usage of my application? This is cool. Let's see if we get some nice usage statistics based on the fact that you hopefully have interacted a little bit with my website. The one that I'm highlighting here is the one that's going to be the most interesting to see if Application Insights have been able to show me some nice things here. Yeah, there we go. We have United Kingdom. This is me testing. You see there's a lot of Swedish activity. That's me. And United Kingdom, India, the Netherlands, and United States. There are sessions happening all over the world here. So my telemetry is there, and I can go and hit search. If I want to go and dive right into my telemetry and search on lots of things, I want to see what you guys wrote to me. I want to see your messages. Let's see. All right, so let's see the trace messages, right? That's what we're interested in. There are some trace messages that you guys have sent. Let's see. All right. It can be a little bit long, this page here, with a lot of information in here. So what you can do is remove, let's see, custom events. Remove them. Custom events are the one that I entered as start home and end home. That's the interaction with the SDK. That's giving me a lot of telemetry that I can use to measure the speed and stability of my site. There's a lot of page views as well that are maybe obscuring our view of the trace. Exceptions, you know that I collected exceptions, and let's see. Pratik says, hello Magnus, good morning. That's great. Let's remove this page view, the page views as well from my view here. We can see if there are any other nice trace messages sent to me. My own should be in there. John says testing. And then there's my own trace right there that I sent. So you can see all of the data that we just entered in the website, the interaction with the web application that we did is automatically gathered in and put into Application Insights, and I can just dive into this thing. And it's really, really powerful. It's amazing, actually, that we're able to do all of this with Application Insights. Cool. So deployment slots and traffic routing, I was also going to mention. Let's go and do that. These are also very powerful, powerful features of websites. So in the interest of time, I'm actually going to go into something pre-made. I can set this up in like a minute or two in my Radix web party site, but I've already set it up for this other site called Magnus Demo. I've already set this up, so I'm going to go in there as well, instead and open up the settings. and have a little look inside and see what we can find. There's something here called slots, deployment slots. When I click on that, for my website, browsing is kind of slow, but oops, not responding. We'll have to maybe refresh this page. Yep. Browser is refreshing. All right, what we're going to see soon is the deployment slots, and I can explain what that is while this is loading. For my website, I can have several slots. In fact, I can have up to 5 slots per website that are also websites. They are alternate deployment slots where I can deploy changes and upgrades to my code. And I already have that, as I said, set up, where I can do, for instance, I can have a staging slot, stuff that is about to go into production, right? And I can have a development slot, for instance, so that I can go and do development on my website. Let's see, deployment slots, come on. Yes, there we go. As you can see, for my application here, I have Magnus demo-staging and Magnus demo-development. That's a standardized naming template. I can choose whatever development or staging that name. It can be test, it can be anything. But for instance, here I have Magnus demo-development, Magnus demo-development, and you can see that I'm already on version 3 there in development. If I go and go to staging in a different tab here, I'll change to staging. You can see that staging has version 2, and the production version at this time, the production version would be 1.6 if I'm not mistaken. Let's browse to that. It actually says 1 here, but it's probably browser caching. I've had some interesting browser caching issues. It should be 1.6. So you can see I have several slots of this code, and that's great because I can now something called traffic routing here. And traffic routing is really, really powerful. It's a way for me to route traffic to my different slots. Why would I do that? Well, this is because I can do something called A/B testing. And you can see it's already set up here. For production is taking 75% of the load, and 25% of my application activity is going to my staging site. When I'm happy with the staging next version 2 of my site going out, I can swap staging and production and make my staging slot my actual production slot. There will be no downtime while I do this, and also this traffic routing thing means that I can do A/B testing. It means that I can deploy 2 versions of my site and have different amounts of traffic hit the different versions of my site. And I know, for instance, Azure.com is doing this all the time. So it's really, really, really cool. So staging and production can be traffic routed. Now that's great for staging and production, right? That's cool. But what about development? So development is a public URL. I can browse to it. magnusdemo-development.azurewebsites.net. Great. Anyone can try and guess this, and it's actually not protected at all. Or is it? In fact, it is. Because when I go into the current portal again, if I go down to Magnus Demo, the website there, you can see that the slots are in there as well. If I go into development and I hit configure, this literally takes seconds to set up. Seconds to set up. It's amazing. And if I go into my settings screen here, my configuration screen, and scroll down, you can see I've already set up authentication and authorization for this site, for this slot. So if I take now a private browser where I am not signed in, as you know, I am signed in the portal with my current credentials, but if I go to an in private where I'm not signed in and browse to my development, you can see that I automatically get prompted to authenticate. And when I say that I'm Magnus at loftysoft.com and authenticate, I can access development. And this works perfectly with all my domain users, all my development teams, and all the people working on my products who are able to authenticate with my Active Directory. And this works with single sign-on, so there is really nothing I need to do. I had to sign in because I was in private, but if I wasn't in private, I didn't have to sign in. I just know that only people in our organization can see Dash development, which is extremely important sometimes where you don't want to disclose things that are not yet publicly viewable. So that's really cool. That's application insights, deployment slots, and traffic routing. I'm going to call out also security in Azure. We looked now at the Active Directory and how that plays a role in my access control to my deployment site or my development site. But Azure supports role-based access control, which is really good. It means that I can do things like this. I can go into my code again and go to settings in Visual Studio Online. I can go all the way up to my top level, the control panel. I'm the owner of this Visual Studio instance. I go to the settings, and you can see down here it says that this account is backed by Loftysoft AB Azure Active Directory. It means that access to the code, access to the project is also backed by my corporate Active Directory. The Active Directory for my company is controlling access to this instance of Visual Studio Online. And if I go to the web application, let's say that we want to set up some access rights here for the application. Role-based access control works brilliantly with the portal as well, providing the access, for instance, to Radix Web Party here. Let's say that I have a company that I do outsourcing to. I might create a team for these people and grant them access to, I mean, I can go down to like they can only have access to the development piece, but they can't put stuff in production, for instance. I can do whatever level of access I want with role-based access control on any level in this sort of hierarchy of content. Let's make a contributor role, and let's pull up some users from my Active Directory. Let's see, I think I have one called develop. I have something called a team or something. Oh, there's a friend. I can add Timo. Timo's a friend. He can be a contributor to my site. So I can just select a specific user or a group of users, and I can grant them access on a specific level to a specific resource in my Azure account. It means that we can have, for instance, a production team or a DevOps team that are the only ones who have access to deploy to production. But maybe every team member has access to the development or the test environment. So it's completely configurable with role-based access control all over the place. It's actually quite great. Okay, that piece I've already shown you. That's just to remember. Now, we don't have a lot of minutes to spare in this presentation, but I am going to really quickly run through how they do development and test at Microsoft. They have something they call the Azure Dev Test Lab. And what is that? Well, first of all, I'm going to show you that I have, let's see, here, another version of the portal with some nice query string stuff on top of it there that I actually shows that I do indeed have access to development and test, Dev Test Lab, because I have private preview early access to this thing. They've talked about it publicly, so it's not secret, but I'm not allowed to show you what it looks like live right now. What I am allowed to show you, though, is tell you what it's about and show you sort of a dry run in PowerPoint. So I apologize for that, but this is early days and it's private, so I can't show you the live stuff. Now, basically what Dev Test Lab is sort of a fenced piece of your Azure cloud. A defined area with some quota, a budget, some policies of access, for instance, security is there, where you can have a bunch of templates running. You get your dashboards showing how much usage you have on your dev test environment. And you can let the developers and testers have access to this space where you can do sort of monitoring how a project is using Azure. You can do a bunch of really quick divisioning in here. It's really, really efficient. You can provision stuff really fast and have your developers not take time to set up development environments and things like that, because you can create them once as templates, and then everyone can go into the lab and just initiate a template. So I'm going to quickly just walk through in slides how this looks in a typical scenario. For instance, you click on your lab in Azure, you get something that looks like this, and I say I want to create a virtual machine in this lab. We're going to pick, in this case, why don't we just pick Windows 8.1 in this lab, clicking for Windows 8.1, and then select the size of the virtual machine. Let's just use a one-core virtual machine. It's the A1 standard size. And then I can pick also from a list of templates. I can pick whatever I want to put in my lab. Let's say I select Visual Studio and the .NET Framework and put that into my virtual machine. All of this stuff again is template based. I can select whatever piece I want and pull that into my virtual machine and have a virtual machine with my specific definition created for me. And then since this is template based, this works out of Azure Resource Management templates, or ARM templates. I can get an automatic GUI where I can supply the parameters that are parameterized in my templates, supply values for the parameters. And there's one more thing I want to call out at the bottom there, scheduled shutdown opt-out. In this dry run demo thing, we're opting out of scheduled shutdown, but we can actually have virtual machines running inside of our lab that automatically on a schedule, let's say every evening or maybe over the weekend or something, all of the machines are shut down in Azure. And for those of you who know, when a virtual machine in Azure is shut down, it's actually not costing any money, or it's costing very little because it's not allocating a virtual machine anymore. So when you shut it down, it's going to save your organization money for using, for not having them run when they're not being used. So shutdown opt-out in this case, and then bam, right there, a running virtual machine exactly according to the specifications that I made. This takes only minutes, and I can keep a virtual machine. I can stop it, and I can come back the next morning and start the same virtual machine up again and start working immediately. It's super efficient and very, very, very powerful. And because our time in this presentation is running out right now, we need to stop this demo right here. There's a lot more to be said about Azure Dev Test Lab, but it's something that you need to look at for the future. So we have come up to, if you have any questions, you should feel free to ask those questions now. While you think about this, I'm going to call out an upcoming webinar where we will talk more about strategic decisions and business optimization reasons to go to the cloud. It's going to be Thursday, September 24th, and this webinar is going to be more about the business aspect of cloud utilization. Maybe you have a manager in your company that would need to see this webinar. It's going to be me presenting again in cooperation here with Radix Web once more. We're going to talk about why do we do this thing? Why would we want to go to the cloud? What are the benefits of doing it? And what are the powers that we can enable inside of our applications? So I hope, I can't see that there are any new questions on the question board. That's fine. So in summary, what I would like to sort of call out here is this style of working where you get everything just managed as a service. Like maybe your company has you know, a build server or something that you run and host yourselves. That's great, but that's a task. Somebody needs to take care of that thing. You should not do that probably. You should have that automatically just delivered to you as a service. One option is to use Visual Studio Online. You don't have to. You can use other products as well to achieve the same result. But you also need to consider monitoring. You could use Application Insights. You don't have to. You can use other products as well, as long as you use some sort of product to do this. You need to be able to learn how your application is working in production so that you can feed back that functionality or lack thereof, whatever is happening with your production environment. You need to be alerted, and you can pull back information and redo and get better and quickly iterate and quickly deploy a new version and make a change in your production environment in a rapid and agile way. So this whole presentation has been around trying to make you guys awesome all the time, trying to make you guys empowered, really. And I hope that that has given you, if you didn't know all of this already, I hope you didn't, I hope I told you something new, that this makes you great, that this makes you fast, and makes you, enables you to focus only on your business, only on clearing that dashboard, the backlog, and pulling new work and pushing new features out. That's what it's all about. And you should really do these really agile and quick environments today. If you're not doing it, you should start. And I do it all the time, and there's no other way. It's fantastically fun. I hope that you guys have seen that I am very passionate about this. I love this. I love this work, and you should feel free to ask me if you have any follow-up questions. You should absolutely ask. I won't charge you for sending me an email. That's perfectly fine. We can, if there's anything if you want to talk about something. With these words, I think I did just exactly 1 hour since we started a few minutes late. I will hand it back to Pratik.
Hey, thanks Magnus for the same. And yeah, we are on time, I would say. We started a bit late. And thanks a lot to all the participants as well. So looking forward to see you again on 24th of September. We are coming up with another interesting webinar a couple of weeks down the line. And meanwhile, feel free to send in your queries, any questions you have. Myself and Magnus will be more than happy to answer them. We'll be sending you a brief survey after this webinar, and also contact details in case you want to reach us. Anything else, Magnus, from your end?
Well, I'm done. So thank you guys for attending, audience. It was great, and thank you Reddit Web for setting this up.
Thanks for your time, Mr. Magnus. Goodbye, and have a nice week ahead, everyone.
All right, bye.